I travel across North America and deal with some problems, Part 2, by Logan Burns 346. Alright, so my first little tale seemed to do relatively well here. People seem to like it, so let's keep this going then, shall we? Just like last time, I feel like I should lay out some more information about me, what I do, how I do it, and the likes. Well, if you didn't get through my last post all of the way, I'm Kane. I hunt bad things, be it human or otherwise, and I travel across the majority of North America to do so. Yes, that means that I've been to Canada and Mexico as well, a few times to get jobs done. And I'll tell you right now that it is annoying to smuggle a trunk full of firearms, stolen money, and other paraphernalia over the border of either of those countries. I have no clue how the cartels do it so often because it gives me a headache every single time. And that reminds me, yeah, I do have a good amount of stolen money on me most of the time. Since this career of mine doesn't pay too well, as you would imagine, I have to steal money or get counterfeit bills or whatever to keep myself alive and well armed. I've gotten so good at it that I don't have to choose between eating and sleeping in a bed anymore. Those were issues in the old days. I also have my fair share of allies across the country that allow me to crash at their house or apartment while I do my work, which helps an absolute load. I may tell you guys about some of them at some point or another, but not right now. This doesn't seem to be exactly the best time to lay out all of my trade secrets. I guess the other stuff to cover is that I'm in my 50s, and yes, I'm that old. I'm a Capricorn. I like long walks on the beach, wine tasting, and I'm definitely single and ready to mingle, ladies. And with that god-awful attempt at humor out of the way, let's set up the next story for y'all. Now, in all of my years of doing this, I've had some of the worst luck imaginable, and vice versa. This story is one that falls into the latter category, as I was smack dab in the middle of Montana in the middle of December for this job. Thank God that this was over a decade into my career so that I actually had a place to sleep. Though it was nearly a 6-hour drive from where all the buzz was coming from. And as you would imagine, the age of the internet really helped me hone my craft. I was able to pick up on this from a conspiracy forum that I lurked on to find cases. A lot of them were obviously not real, but this one was thankfully backed up with some bona fide newspaper articles and some missing persons reported in the area. Most people were spelling it out to be a bear, but the folks on this little forum I was sniffing around thought it was some kind of hell beast. It isn't, by the way. It is honestly more akin to a bear, but we'll get to that later. So it had been about an hour since I took my Bronco off the already desolate road and into the foot-deep snow before I ran into something of note. There was a truck. Park rangers, it seemed, like the general shape of it, overturned. It was stacked high with snow, and it was more akin to a crumpled tin can than it was a functioning motor vehicle, at least at this point. Man, it really is one of them, I said, as I climbed out of my truck and shivered as the cold winds hit me like a bullwhip. If y'all haven't been out in the thick of it in Montana at this time of year, I seriously do not recommend it. After this sudden streak of pain, I was also alerted to another interesting thing. This time it was the smell. There was some ungodly stink nearby, and I believed it to be behind the truck. I got my Bellini R1 out of the truck pretty fast. This is my rifle for killing the big beasts, since I can sling 10 rounds of 30-06 with this thing like it was nobody's business. Anyway, I proceeded to march through the snow until I was finally able to make out where the stink was coming from. It was a dead man, ripped down the middle with his lower half nowhere to be seen. He had been there for about an hour or two, I reckoned. So he was downright nearly frozen, and most of the blood left from the fatal injury had been washed away or padded by the swaths of snow raining down from the sky. At this very moment is when the second of my alarm bells rang out in my mind. There are a few reasons why I was perturbed about this situation. The first one is, obviously, because some poor fellow got bisected by this nasty monster a mere hour before I put a .30 caliber boo-boo on it. That really annoyed me. The second reason is because this particular brand of beast tends to stick around in the same square mile or so, watching and waiting for any food to show up. This tends to last for a few days at a time, and since this had happened recently, that means that the monster already had me in its sights. I quickly did a twirl to collect my surroundings, and there it was. 200 yards out and barely visible from the snowfall was the creature. Now this thing is about 8 or 9 feet tall, give or take, with giant tufts of white and gray fur and a head similar to that of a bull terrier. Well, a bull terrier with a flatter nose and more humanoid teeth. I call this thing the Smiler. This type, more specifically, the winter Smiler, because the brown and black colored brethren of this thing tend to stick around the south. These like to be up in the north where it's cold, and they cross the border into the US when the snow starts. This thing gave me its winning smile, and that row of blood-stained teeth shone like crimson beacons through the snow. I couldn't quite see them, but I already knew its beady little black eyes were connected with mine at this very moment. In less than a second, this thing was on all fours, hauling itself towards me. This was not the most ideal of situations, but it was time to get down to business. Now, most people would run, but this thing can outrun you. It can also out-wrestle you, outbite you, and every other thing that you can think of other than outthink you. So instead, I took a crouching position, shouldered my rifle, and took aim. It took 3 shots of 30-06 to slow this thing to a halt. And thank God it stopped. He was probably about 10 yards away from me by the time he ate snow. One more handful of seconds and I would have been a lot more pieces than I am comfortable with. I knew that the thing was still alive, but the only movement coming from it was now the slow, weak rise and fall of its chest as its blood seeped out onto the snow around it. I approached cautiously, and when I was about 3 yards away, I pulled my Ruger Super Red Hawk from its holster, and I put a .454 into its skull. The thing yelped and went stiff, and my job was done. I breathed a sigh of relief. I said a quick prayer for the dead guy laying up beside his Jeep, and I marched my way back through the snow and to my car. It was a long but peaceful drive back to the road. That was until I saw a very familiar Dodge Ram in my rearview mirror. It didn't notice me as I was pulling down the same trail as I had just exited from a little while before, but I knew it anywhere. It was the DeVoe brothers, a couple of less than welcoming fellow problem solvers. They really do not like me. It's safe to say I sped up a little bit because I was not going to get in a gun or fist fight this afternoon. Not to mention I was more than a little happy to imagine the saddened look on their faces when they found out that the beast they had drove 3 days to gun down had already been killed by someone that they hate. And I mean someone, as there are a handful of others out there and they want all of them, especially me. Alright, I think that's the meat and potatoes of that story. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and make sure to comment if you have any questions about me or what I do. If you want me to talk about any creatures that you do know of, I'll be sure to do so if it's something I've actually hunted. Anyway, this is Kane signing out. Y'all have a good night.